everyone. Welcome to our webinar today on portability and in-state transfers. And yes, you can advance it, Catherine. Thank you. This is where we all want to be today. It's not what I see when I look out my window. I don't know what city this is, but
this is Chicago.
Thank you. No idea.
You're welcome.
Well, it's probably cold there too, but it's a great picture. Let's see. You can advance that, please. Okay, so just a quick note to start on portability and in-state transfers. I'm just going to tell you all what programs allow these, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of what portability is. So HCV, of course, it's a federal voucher, and you can take that anywhere you want. If it is a veteran voucher, VASH voucher, portability must be approved by the VA in the area where you're going and the VA in the area where you're living. But otherwise it is allowed if they have buy-in on that. For the COC PSH programs, portability is possible, but rare. Sort of on the same lines as that approval by the VA, out of state must be approved by the PSH manager, and the receiving state must also have a COC PSH program that agrees to accept that port. COC PSH can in-state transfer in the state of Colorado, but it must be approved by the COC PSH manager and depends on agency availability within the state COC. State SHV, MH, HSP, and ROHP programs cannot port out of state. These are state funded vouchers, so they have to stay in the state of Colorado. They can in-state transfer in Colorado, but it must be approved by the state housing voucher manager, and it depends on the agency availability where that person wants to move in Colorado. CAT vouchers, again, are also state-funded vouchers, so they must stay within the state of Colorado. They cannot port out, but they can in-state transfer if it is approved by the CAT program manager. Section 811, same deal, no portability out of state, but they can in-state transfer if the move is to another Section 811 unit in a different property. HCV project base, only eligible participant receives a tenant-based voucher after 1 year in project base, and then it's treated just like a HCV. State housing voucher project base, nope, they can't transfer and they can't leave the state, so they are where they are. The emergency housing voucher program is essentially the same as HCV. Participants may port immediately, and they can port to any housing authority, including housing authorities that don't have emergency housing vouchers. They can go anywhere in the country that they want. So that was fine. That's great. Thank you, Catherine. So portability. Portability is the term we use to describe a participant's ability to move from one PHA to another with continued housing assistance. So the ability to take their voucher and say they want to go to Chicago because it looks nicer than Colorado today, and use that voucher in that other jurisdiction. Division of Housing's jurisdiction is the entire state of Colorado, so DOH does not port transfers within the state. This is often confusing for other housing authorities or sometimes other folks within the state, that when you have a DOH voucher, the moves within state are called in-state transfers. They're not ports. HUD regulations require that a current participant be in good standing in the program in order to port their voucher. So I'll talk about what that means. If you can, there you go. In good standing, a participant owes no debt to their current landlord, their agency, or their housing authority. All debts owed must be paid in full before we can approve a port. So if someone's in a repayment agreement, if someone has left their unit and owes money to their landlord because of damages on the unit or something related, they cannot port until that is taken care of. The participant must not be in the process of eviction or termination from the program. And the participant in the program has to have given their current landlord a written notice of their desire to move per the lease, 30 or 60 days, or obtained a mutual rescission of lease. So in the port process, which I think I talk about in a minute, we do require, Division of Housing wants to see a copy of that notice that someone has given their landlord, because that's a requirement. Non-resident out-of-state applicant. So an applicant family may lease a unit under portability. Sorry, my camera is covering the words. There we go. May lease a unit under portability only if the family is income eligible for admission to the voucher program in that area. So the initial PHA makes that determination. If neither the head or the spouse or co-head had legal residence in the jurisdiction at the time of the application, the family must move in our jurisdiction, must live rather in our jurisdiction for at least 12 months before they can port. So HCV folks, if they've just been pulled off of the waiting list, but they live in California or live in Florida, they actually have to live in our state for 12 months for 1 year before they're allowed to port out. This can be waived with a reasonable accommodation for a person with a disability. This is also waived in the EHV program. EHV does not have that 12-month requirement in our jurisdiction before they can port. They can port immediately. Okay, so the outgoing portability process. The first step is that the applicant requests portability with their agency coordinator at least 60 days prior to move. We need that time to work with the receiving housing authority to get all the paperwork together, to make sure that when that person gets to their PHA in that county or city or state where they're going, that all of the voucher information is there. We need that time. We have found that some people sometimes move somewhere and then let us know, hey, I want my voucher sent here. That happens, but it's still going to take us a good while to get your voucher there. So they're going to have to wait that 60-day period. It doesn't generally always take 60 days, but it's going to take us some time to do that coordination. The coordinator and the family must complete the family request for out-of-state portability form and review for completeness. We really like an email on that form for that participant. That's going to be our primary form of contact with that person, especially if they've left the state. We want to be able to email them progress at each step to let them know where we're at with it. They have to confirm the city, county, and state and other identifying information where they want to live or their preferred housing authority in the area they're going. HUD states that they get to choose, that voucher holder gets to choose where they want to go and what housing authority they want to go to. If they elect not to choose and just say, I want to go to Houston or I want to go to Dallas, we're going to choose the housing authority they go to if they don't make that choice. So we have to have a specified place to go, but if they don't give us one, we'll give you one. Let's see. So the coordinator at the agency level is going to collect the following documentation from the participant and the landlord. We're going to get that request for out-of-state portability form that includes their email address, contact info, and where they want to go, hopefully where they want to go. The coordinator is going to get a 30-day notice of mutual rescission or lease form. So sometimes some landlords require 60 days. So something indicating that the landlord knows that person is moving out of that unit and their lease has ended and they're electing not to renew. We have to have verifications of income to send to that new housing authority. We need a new EIV. If they receive child support, we need an FSR and a CBMS, or if they, pay stubs or whatever their form of income is, benefit letter, we have to send that to that new housing authority. So we have to have all of those income verifications in the file. We're going to issue a voucher for 120 days. The agency can do that. And then if we used to say you have to do it on paper, but now you can do it in Elite, and then we can use it on our end. If we need to change it or change the increment, we can do that. You're welcome to issue that searching voucher in Elite. We're going to need you to print a 50058 from Elite and process an annual re-exam if there is one due within the next 4 months. You can also send to our portability officer, to Jamie, when requesting this port, or to your SPOC rather, when requesting this port, birth certificates, social security cards, and state IDs. HUD doesn't say these are required to port someone. So if you don't send them, we can still send the port request to that housing authority, but it's really helpful and they're really probably going to want it. They can't say we have to have it, but it's strongly suggested. When you print out that 5.8 from Elite, it doesn't have their entire social security numbers on it for anyone in that family. So that housing authority where they're going is going to need to know those social security numbers. So the best way to get them is off of that original document. Additional documentation, may be requested for applicants recently drawn from the wait list who are requesting that immediate port. Next slide, please. So you send that port packet with all those documents and info to your SPOC for approval. I misspoke earlier. You do not send it to your portability office, our portability officer directly. You don't send that to Jamie. You send it to the SPOC, who's going to go through it, make sure it's all there, and then that SPOC is going to take it from there. Oh, I thought there was more on that slide. Sorry. The SPOC's going to review all the documents. They're going to create a payment hold for future payments, and they're going to move that participant out of the unit in Elite. That move out of Elite is very essential to the process so that we don't accidentally continue to pay that landlord. Moves out of Elite in the Elite module can be done in the future. So if someone's not moving out for 2 months, we can still future date it, that move out in Elite. DOH and our portability officer is going to complete what's called a HUD 52665 form, and then send that form saying the person wants to port with all of that documentation to the receiving housing authority where they want to go. So that's on our end. That's why it takes several days. And then once it gets to that housing authority, it may take them 30 more days to act upon it. So that's why we need that 60-day window. Our portability officer is going to email confirmation to the coordinator and to that participant, because hopefully we'll have their email address with contact information for the new housing authority so that they know who to call when they get to that city. The participant should contact that housing authority for instructions on how their leasing procedures. When a RAFTA needs to be turned in, all of the steps that they do with us, they need to see if that housing authority does them slightly differently. They're going to have different payment standards. And so that participant, that voucher holder is responsible for finding out that information in that area. So incoming portability process, when somebody wants to come from another state to our great state, that initial housing authority is going to send that port packet to our portability officer at the Division of Housing with all the same information like we had in the outgoing packet. Our portability officer is going to create a record in Elite and issue a voucher depending on where the person wants to go. So Jamie, our port officer, is going to try to find out where they want to go. Sometimes on the paperwork, it just says they want to go to Colorado. Sometimes it just says Denver area, which includes a lot of places. Sometimes it just says Colorado Springs area, which could also include a lot of places. So Jamie's going to dig in and maybe contact that person, find out where it is they want to go, and then assign specifically where they want to go, and then assign that voucher to a contract agency in that area. And then Jamie's going to reach out to that SPOC and that contract agency and say, hey, I have this person coming your way. Here's their voucher and here's their file packet. That contract agency is required to contact the family within 10 days of receipt of that port packet to complete a briefing for that family, to remind them of the voucher rules and to let them know any DOH specific rules that they may not be familiar with and procedures, and to let them know what the move paperwork is. The coordinator at that agency is going to schedule time. Oh, I just said this, to provide that briefing. And the family is required to attend that briefing. It's okay to do that over the phone or virtually. For ported participants, it's okay that a voucher has been issued prior to the briefing because that housing authority where they came from actually issued them the voucher. Next slide, please. Step 3, coordinator is going to complete a lease up with the family and the landlord and enter that action into Elite once that person has found a place to lease up. The move in action is going to depend on whether or not the ported is an applicant or a participant. So Jamie's going to probably let you know in her email to you at the SPOC and agency level, hey, this should be a new admission. Hey, this should be a move-in. The difference is whether that person came off the waiting list in Chicago or Texas or Utah, or if they were already leased up there. So if they had just come fresh off the waiting list, have never lived anywhere, they're going to be a new admission and portability move-in otherwise. For some information in Elite, such as their zip code before admission, program start date, the coordinator is going to need to look at the 50058 that the portability officer provided in the port packet. If we don't have that information on the 58, Jamie's going to reach out to that initial PHA and she will have gotten that and let the agency and the SPOC know that information. All right, Catherine's got a poll.
Well, before I jump to our new and exciting segment of the webinar called the poll question, I want to just let everyone know I did send an email invitation for the webinar this morning that included a lot of attachments. Some people's emails reject if you are blind copied with a lot of attachments. So please know that when we upload the recording of this webinar to our training page on the website, we also include one PDF that includes all the forms, but we did include our updated portability process sheet for both out outgoing and incoming ports, as well as the request for portability form. Those are also on our website, but I forgot to mention that I sent a bunch of attachments this morning. I know some of you don't always get those emails. Before we jump to poll question, which again is something I'm trying out, Lynn or Jamie, do we have any questions that can't be answered? And Lynn, I didn't make you a co-host, so let me do that real quick. And I'm sorry for that. All right, Lynn, you are live. If we have any questions that could not be answered.
Nope, no questions.
Okay. So poll question. I have a question. We are trying out the poll function in Zoom, which I'm aware has been a function in Zoom for several years. We've just never used it in anticipation of our next webinar that's coming up at the end of this month. So I'm going to launch, thank you for being my guinea pigs on this. I'm going to launch a couple poll questions that I will ask you guys to answer. And forgive me if I don't know what I'm doing, which is very likely. So here comes the first one. This is about voucher portability. Hopefully that you all can see this question, but the question is, what types of vouchers can be ported out of state? It's working. You're all answering it. This is awesome. All right, we're up to 70%. I don't know what is the statistically representative response, but thank you for enduring this. Great, I'm going to end this poll and I'm going to share the results with everyone. Awesome. So what type of vouchers can be ported out of state? It was multiple choice because most of our vouchers can port. Now it's not always doable with some of our programs, but the exception is the state housing voucher program. Because those are funded by the state of Colorado, we can't send that funding out of state, or the CAT vouchers as well. So great, thank you. I'm going to launch one more just to make sure I can launch multiple questions during a webinar. This is a hard one. Who did you cheer for during the Super Bowl? You may only choose one. Excellent. I'm going to end the poll because my girl Rihanna is the winner. I know it's hard, right? When the Broncos or your team aren't in the Super Bowl, and perhaps your team was in the Super Bowl. That halftime show kind of made it more fun. Okay. Oops. Sorry, guys. I didn't share the results. See, I'm learning. Here you go. You all overwhelmingly chose Rihanna, followed by the Eagles. Thank you guys again for this opportunity to test out this poll question. We'll talk a little bit at the end of the webinar on how we're going to use that in our upcoming. But with that, let's move on to in-state transfers, which is me. And I'm off camera today because I'm not feeling 100%, and this weather has got me really not wanting to be on camera. So in-state transfers, this is somewhere in beautiful Colorado, because for transfers, it's when a voucher holder is taking their voucher from one part of the state to another. Just to reiterate, and this was one of the attachments in this morning's email, the different programs and whether or not portability or in-state transfers are allowed. Kimberly did a really nice job going over this form or this table earlier, so I am not going to repeat that. And again, this was an attachment and it will be on our website. So let's talk about the in-state transfer process. For the Housing Choice Voucher Program, participants are able to move anywhere in the state of Colorado with their DOH voucher. We don't have any restrictions because ideally we have an agency that covers every county in the state. And so our participants should have that ability to be portable. I know this isn't about portability, but the federal voucher program is very clear that we need to give our participants the opportunity to live wherever they feel most supported and safe. And so with that, we are committed to being able to transfer an housing choice voucher anywhere in the state of Colorado. In our state housing voucher programs, our permanent supportive housing program and our community access team, or our CAT-V program, I know they are also support the idea of a participant being able to live anywhere in the state where they prefer. However, because of we have a little bit more limitations on the agencies that administer those vouchers and on certain grant requirements, we have to really take a look at those requests before we're able to approve a transfer. So of those three programs, the participants, of course, can request to move in state, but they have to receive an additional level of approval before that move can occur. In our programs, they consider, or our jurisdiction is considered the state of Colorado. So for example, if a participant is living in Boulder and wants to move to Grand Junction, if they had a voucher with Boulder Housing Partners, for example, Boulder Housing Partners would port their voucher to Grand Junction Housing Authority. However, if they have a division of housing voucher and they live in Boulder and they want to move to Grand Junction, we call that a transfer. Just so we're clear, HUD does not allow a portability to occur if the participant is not leaving their initial PHA's jurisdiction. So in the case of a DOH voucher in Boulder wanting to move to Grand Junction, and we from time to time hear from our agent or from our participants, this participant specifically wants to work with Grand Junction Housing Authority's program or Denver Housing Authority's program. They are requesting we port from the Division of Housing to another housing authority's program. And unfortunately, HUD does not consider that a port and will not approve it because our jurisdiction is the state. So we just like to provide that clarification whenever we can, and particularly for requests that we often get from another housing authority in Colorado, a participant wanting to come to the Division of Housing for a variety of reasons, but not intending on leaving their current PHA's jurisdiction. For the Housing Choice Voucher Program, during an in-state transfer, the initial agency's voucher increment, the number of vouchers assigned to your agency, will decrease by 1, and the receiving agency's voucher increment will increase by 1. Did I say the same word twice? Okay, so agency A, where the participant says, I want to move to agency B, we're going to lower agency A's voucher total by 1, and then we're going to increase agency B vouchers total by 1. We have to do this to sort of keep our numbers stable, and we may be in a position here where we can make the original agency whole, but that's a lot of tracking and we haven't gotten our final budgets yet. But for now, just understand if a participant is leaving your agency to go to another agency, that is 1 less voucher in your total pool of vouchers. So the in-state transfer process for Housing Choice Voucher. Similar to portability, the participant must give proper notice to the landlord and provide verification to the coordinator that they would like to move. The participant will complete the family requests for in-state transfer form. This was one of the attachments sent this morning with the coordinator. The agency will then issue a manual voucher for 120 days. We ask that you do not do this in Elite because there's a lot of behind the scenes work that the SPOCs have to do to get the record in Elite transferred from agency A to agency B. And then the agency is going to review those forms for completeness and send the following to their SPOC for approval. That family request for in-state transfer form, a 30-day notice or a mutual rescission of lease that was provided to the landlord, a manual voucher that the agency worked on with the participant. And if an annual re-exam is due within the next 120 days, we ask that you complete that and send that paperwork as well. So the receiving agency has enough demographic, income, expense, and asset information should the family locate a unit to move in right away. It saves some time in collecting all of that documentation. The in-state transfer process for the state housing voucher programs, the permanent supportive housing program, and the community access team voucher program is as follows. The participant, again, must reach out to the coordinator with their request. The coordinator is going to email information to the SPOC, who is then going to reach out to the relevant staff here at DOH that manages either the SHV, the PSH, or the CAT-V programs for approval. So again, this is where the step is just a little bit different, one extra step. We need to make sure the program leads for those other programs need to make sure that it's a viable transfer, that there is an agency in the community they're transferring to. Again, if it's a grant program, that there's enough funding in the grant to support the transfer, and so on. If that transfer request is approved, you're going to follow the same process that you followed for the HCV transfer, completing the form, issuing the manual voucher, reviewing the forms for completeness, and then sending to the SPOC the following forms that we mentioned on the previous screen. And again, completing that annual reexamination if one is due in the next 4 months. And a little extra step for the state housing voucher program, particularly for those voucher administration agencies that are also the service provider for some of the state housing voucher programs. There is a really amazing, it's the policies and procedures document that's a supplement to our admin plan. And then in specific, we're going to direct you to Appendix A, which talks about the guidance for service providers working with state housing voucher in state transfers. Carla has created a very useful policy manual that you can follow if you are an SHV voucher administering agency who also provides the supportive services to your participants. This is a clickable link. I'm not sure if it's clickable in the document I sent you, so I wanted to also provide the very long internet link that you can punch in to get to that document. It is also located on our website. So once the request has been made by the family that they would like to transfer their voucher, and once that has received the proper approval if required, the SPOC has all of the paperwork they need. This is the steps that they will take. They will now issue a voucher to the new agency where the participant is locating or relocating to. And they will do this in Elite so that we can attach the voucher to the new agency in our software system. They will then move the resident out of the unit in Elite. They're going to change the caseworker in our resident processing screen so that this person will now show up on the new agency's reports, lists, and so on. And then they're going to send an email to the initial agency, the receiving agency, and to any relevant DOH staff, identifying which type of voucher it is and letting each agency know what the next steps are. Sorry for that cough. So now that you've received that email that you have an individual that's transferring their voucher from agency A to agency B, the receiving agency, here are the steps. In response to that SPOC email, the receiving agency coordinator will send by secure email or fax to the new coordinator the following. Oops, I'm sorry, I said this opposite. The initial agency, the one who is transferring the participant, will send the following to the new agency. Sorry for missing that. We ask for a lot of documents, and I won't read through them all because they're listed here, but let me explain why. We've gone through many audits. Many of you are aware because we reached out to you for documentation, particularly for new admissions. We are being audited on our waitlist draws, our voucher offers, and our new admissions. And critical components to that audit request, they want to see the original application that was completed by the family. They want to see if we verified what needed to be verified at the time they were issued the voucher. And if you are a receiving agency who is getting that information as a transfer, if you don't have everything that's in what we call part 1 of the file, the original documents that can't be recreated, and the file is selected for audit, we have a very difficult time trying to track down where the original documents might be. So we are asking that the initial agency send very specifically these documents to the new agency so that the new agency can have a complete file that is audit proof. Okay, so again, I'm not going to read through that list because it's a lot, but you have it for reference. Now the receiving agency is going to reach out to that in-state transfer participant to connect with them. And they will reach out to the SPOC if they have any questions or concerns. The thought is, okay, agency A has transferred tenant to agency B. They've expressed here is who you will be connected to. But we would ask that the receiving agency make that initial contact with the participant to call them in. If there's any documents that need to be completed. If you have a process to meet with them to discuss, how your agency works or anything along those lines, we really want that participant to feel connected to their new agency and know who they should be contacting as they search for a new unit to lease up. One of the documents that we handed out or that I sent out with the email this morning is called a pre-transfer or pre-portability questionnaire. This was created by one of our partner agencies several years ago. They were experiencing a lot of participants who were transferring into their jurisdiction, into their community, as well as several participants who wanted to leave and move somewhere else, either out of state or to another community. And what they were finding with some of their participants is that they were leaving. So this agency was in Colorado Springs. They were in a really, tight-knit, supportive community. They knew how much rents were. And I think they wanted to move, to, let's say, Chicago because of the beautiful Chicago scene that we had earlier. What they weren't expecting is that the cost of living in Chicago is twice that of where they were coming from. Traffic is wild in Chicago. It's cold in the winter. Oh my gosh. And so this agency provided the tool that was sent as an attachment that really just says, have you been to Chicago? Have you checked out what's available to rent there? Do you know anyone there? Do you have a job lined up? Just things like that. Just sort of leading questions to try and get them to really think critically about their choice to leave their community. It's not an attempt to keep someone where they're at, but just so that they know what they're heading into, and it might not look the same as where they currently are. It is a really good conversation starter to have when you're sitting down with a participant. Again, we work with people, a lot of people who are people with disabilities, a lot of people who have experienced a history of unstable housing. We support and promote people transferring and moving to a place where they feel safe and supported, but we want to make sure that they're not, making decisions without thinking them through. So we find this questionnaire to be very handy. And I think I kind of explained all of the points on this slide. But again, not required, just something if you're experiencing a lot of people leaving or coming into your community, just something to consider using. And we also wanted to provide you with several resources and references. Really, well, I say it's really good. It's really long and it's quite boring. But in 2015, HUD really worked on streamlining the portability process and made a lot of changes to make portability more accessible to participants, and to clear up a lot of misconceptions that housing authorities had. You know, can I extend the voucher if I ported somebody out and they're now in their new community and their voucher expired? Am I allowed to extend their voucher, or does the new housing authority have to extend the voucher? Just a lot of those questions that help make the program more understandable to both the housing authorities and the participants. A lot of agencies saying, sorry, we're not taking any ports right now. HUD made some clarifications to that rule that said, well, you sure are. The only reason you can say you're not taking a port is if you're in a budget shortfall. So a lot of really great clarifications were provided in that final rule. So if you were curious, we wanted to provide you with that resource. There's also a PIH notice 2012-42 that talks about the HUD process for housing choice voucher families moving with continued assistance, portability. That's a code word for portability, but the way we do in-state transfers kind of aligns with portability. So it is relevant to both. Of course, we have our websites and our administrative plan. This is referencing page 261 of the 2020 admin plan. Again, sorry, I missed that updated reference, but we'll talk about our current draft admin plan in a moment. And then again, wanted to provide that document for the state housing voucher policies and procedures, which is a supplement to our admin plan. Before I talk about updates, Lynn, are there any questions about in-state transfers?
Hi there, this is Kimberly. We have discovered that Lynn and Jamie were not able to see the questions. So I've been looking at them because I can see them. So we have one in-state transfer question, and then we have one question that's both in-state and port. So I'll let you answer the in-state one first, which I answered, but you might want to expand upon. It is, can an HCV voucher recipient request a change in contract agency if they are not moving? So essentially, can they in-state transfer just to change agencies?
Yes. However, we discourage it unless there is a really important reason that they need to change the contract agency. I'm trying to see your answer here really quick.
Essentially the same as yours. We don't like to do that, but if there's a really good reason we can't, we have done that in the past. Like if they're living in Boulder, but they're with a Denver agency, for example, you know, if they're out of the jurisdiction, that would be a.
If they have a voucher with one community mental health center agency, but they get their services with another community mental health center agency, the issue we come across is the agency who would be losing that voucher loses a voucher. And if the participant isn't moving, we kind of want to take the stance of HUD that says if you're not leaving your jurisdiction, we can't transfer you to another housing authority or port you to another housing authority. Same goes for in-state transfers. If a person can't or doesn't want to work with agency A for a reason, so they want to go to agency B, we ask for a really good reason, sometimes a reasonable accommodation. Sometimes participants don't want to work with agency A because agency A is holding them accountable for some behavior, and they think agency B might not. I'm just thinking of a very specific situation right now where we had a request. So we look at those on our end. Lynn and I will review those requests if they come in, of course, as a reasonable accommodation. You know, absolutely, we consider it. We tend not to want people to leave one agency. Again, it really just comes down to your baselines and how that could impact your admin fee earning, your program size eventually could be impacted by it. So yeah, a long answer for we tend to discourage it, but are open to considering it if there's a good reason, particularly a reasonable accommodation reason. And I'm sorry about that, Lynn and Jamie, because I didn't make you co-hosts or panelists. Of course, you couldn't see the Q&A. I am not on my game today, folks, and I am so sorry about that.
We actually have one more question that's not in the Q&A. that's half port, half in-state transfer. So I will let you answer the in-state transfer piece. Who is responsible for voucher extensions during ports or in-state transfers? You want to start?
Sure. For the extension on an in-state transfer, that request can come to either agency really because it's still a DOH voucher. And so the SPOC will see that request. It's either going to be, a reasonable accommodation request for an extension. And so I don't think it matters. I guess, Lynn, correct me if I'm wrong, but because it's a DOH voucher, regardless of which agency is administering it, the SPOC that oversees that agency has the same ability to view a request for an extension and approve it.
Yes, I agree with you, Catherine. If they've already met with the new agency in their in-state transfer and they've been issued a voucher with that new agency, I would say they should be reaching out to the new agency to request that extension. But maybe if they're still in the community and actually haven't moved, let's say from Fort Collins to Colorado Springs, and they still are working with their partner agency in the Fort Collins area, they can go to them. So yeah, like you said, since it is a DOH voucher, either agency can provide that, but that request would need to go through their SPOC.
And as for the ports part of that question, there are several factors that go into whether we extend a port voucher or not. So essentially all requests for extensions for port vouchers need to go through our portability officer. So you would need to reach out to your SPOC, and then that person will send it to our portability officer, and then she will have to decide whether, depending on the myriad of factors, whether that we can give an extension to that person or not. So you'll have to reach out to your SPOC before giving port voucher extensions. And that is all the questions.
We have several updates and upcoming trainings and webinars we want to talk about. First, next month's webinar, we have a special guest presenting. The Community Economic Defense Project is going to be presenting on fair housing on March 15th at 10 o'clock. So that is excellent. We love to bring in the experts to provide a lot of the training that we are not experts on. And so please do join us for that. And then at the end-ish of this month, February 24th, from 10 o'clock until 11:30, we are hosting a special session on specifically housing choice voucher waitlist management. This is twofold. We are trying to roll out a different type of training. Our monthly webinars, are good, but we also wanted to do something that may be a little more program specific and in-depth. Also, as a response to our most recent audit, where our finding was on housing choice voucher waitlist management. We saw it as an opportunity to take what the auditors summarized in their finding and address where we might be falling short on providing training to our agencies. So we're going to clarify some things in that webinar. I'm going to test out some poll questions just to make sure that what we're presenting is making sense to participants. So please join us. Again, we'll be recording it. If that date doesn't work for you, we will also make it available on our training page. Okay, I want to bring to everyone's attention, last week I did email out the Resident Advisory Board notice. I sent that on February 7th, just to let our participants know that our admin plan and our PHA plan, they are both published right now for public comments. The location of where they are published on our website was included in that notice and in the email I sent. Any participant of our voucher programs is eligible to be on the Resident Advisory Board. We're a statewide housing authority, as you all know, so having a board that just meets is not realistic, but instead we want our participants to understand that they can make public comment to our admin plan. So we ask that you post that in your office where participants will likely see it. It was also posted per HUD requirement in the Denver Post on February 7th. Yes, it was, and it should still be published there, giving the public the information on where these plans are currently published for public comment. The public hearing is on March 24th. Of course, I don't have that open, but once we get our comments and the public hearing is complete on March 24th, we are no longer able to take any public comments on the plan. And you will notice that we proposed a rather large change to our interim process. I also included the admin plan summary of all the major changes that we were proposing, including one to our interim process that we were very excited about. And then HOTMA came in and said, no, ma'am, you will not be doing that. The Housing Opportunities Through Modernization Act has been some legislation that was that passed several years ago that really did an overhaul on the housing choice voucher and public housing programs. There are 3 final sections left to implement, and HUD's implementing them now. So we're going to have to go back and make some changes to our proposed interim policy. I think for the most part, we can keep it as is, which is beneficial to both our participants as well as reducing administrative burden to our agencies. But we're going to have to look at one piece of it that HOTMA has come in and said we have to do differently. Okay, I sent out an action alert this morning. We have a new W-9 and EFT form that is preferred by the Office of the State Controller. That action alert provided both of those new documents. We cannot publish our EFT form on the internet on our website for fraud prevention reasons. So we wanted you all to have those forms. Please take any forms you have, replace them with these. We do understand that there are W-9s and EFTs in circulation right now that are going to come in on the old forms. And like I mentioned in the action alert, we'll push those through, but just understand that the state controller may push back and say no. So we'll do our best to get the old forms pushed through, but just please understand that the state controller is the boss of all of us. We will have to request new forms if they ask us to. And then finally, coming back to the Housing Opportunities Through Modernization Act, or HOTMA, as I mentioned a few bullets ago, there are 3 final sections to implement. 2 of them impact the Housing Choice Voucher Program. One of them impacts public housing, so it won't impact Division of Housing. We are going to attend several trainings and read up on what we need to read up on. But though they must all be implemented by January 1st, 2024, and there are some pretty substantial changes to asset limitations, the way income is reported. And so we will keep you all updated as we learn more and as we implement changes. Any questions, Lynn or Kimberly?
Nope, all clear.
Excellent. Well, that's all we have, but under an hour. That's great. Do let us know. Reach out to your SPOC if you have any questions about this. As I mentioned earlier, we will have this posted on our website along with all the handouts. Thank you all for attending. If you are in a snowy region of the state and you are not home, please be safe, stay warm, drive safe. And with that, I will end the recording and then end our meeting. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day.